Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments, with chief focus, of course, on the implications of the elimination of Yahya Sinwar, the architect of the October 7th massacre, as well as the leader of Hamas, the situation vis-a-vis Lebanon, other regional actors, as well as the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's first and foremost important to highlight how this war began. 378 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping some 250 people, including elderly, men, women, children, and infants. 101 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. The subsequent day, on October 8th of last year, Iran essentially joined the war by greenlighting its proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, to launch cross-border attacks against Israel. Since then, Hezbollah has launched over 12,000 munitions towards Israeli territory, and not Hezbollah alone. Additional Iranian proxies have launched directly at Israel from Syria, Iraq, Yemen, as well as Iran proper. Now, to deliberate the latest, let's turn to Central Israel, where we're joined by TV7's editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, what can you update us with on the latest, with chief focus initially on two fronts, the Gaza Strip as well as the border of Jordan?
Indeed, there is a difference between the incident of the day and the story of the day. The current focus is the terrorist attack from across the River Jordan. Two terrorists earlier today have crossed the river wearing some sort of military uniforms and opened fire on one of the villages not far from the Dead Sea. Two soldiers, one male, one female, not from an elite unit, by all means, regular soldiers serving in the home front rear command, immediately shot at the terrorists and neutralized them. There were two minor casualties on the Israeli side, and the IDF, as we are speaking, is still combing the area to find out whether there were any collaborators. But obviously, this is of concern because Israel and Jordan are enjoying excellent security cooperation, but apparently there is a renewed effort on the part of Iran and its proxies to use Jordan as a launching pad for terror attacks into Israel. So again, this is the incident that we are focusing on today. But the main story, of course, is the aftermath of Yahya Sinwar's demise, whether anyone will be in control of Hamas, whether in Qatar, the political bureau, or in Gaza itself, and whether the successors to Sinwar will go ahead with some sort of a hostage deal and a ceasefire. The latest out of Hamas is that Khalil Haya, who was Sinwar's deputy, said that they are only going to be bolstered by Sinwar's death and that the hostages will only be released when the war ends, which is what Sinwar said all along. But these are, again, only the initial reactions to what the State Department has turned a seismic event in the Middle East.
Indeed. Well, with regard to the first, it's quite interesting that this attack occurred merely a day after Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, visited the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan for a meeting with his counterpart Ayman Safadi. We will shortly hear whether or not there is a connection to these matters. But with regard to your latter point, Khalil al-Haya is delusional, similar to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who declared that after Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah was winning after the demise of Hassan Nasrallah. So they have, of course, their own way of mourning and trying to somehow pull up the morale of the heavily battered Islamist Hamas, as well as Hezbollah, as well as other Iranian proxies for that matter. But let's now turn to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by retired Colonel Joel Rayburn, formerly an assistant or a U.S. Special Envoy for Syria, as well as a Senior Director at the National Security Council, currently the Founding Director of the American Center for Levant Studies, and a Senior Fellow at Hudson Institute. It's good to see you, Joel. I'd like to hear your two cents on the current state of play vis-a-vis the Gaza Strip. Is this a seismic event, as was claimed by U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller? And if so, what are the implications that we can potentially analyze from this current situation?
Well, I think what it symbolizes, I think what the demise of Sinwar symbolizes is the end of Hamas as a significant Iranian regime military proxy. That's really what he represented, to my mind, is the full entry of Hamas into the axis of resistance, aligned with Tehran, funded and armed by Tehran over the space of 15 years, so that it grew into the monster that it was on October 7th. And I think it's a significant. So if you look at the strategic picture across the Middle East, it's not. I think he's the symbolic end of the full loss of a military outpost for the IRGC. They're in the process of losing another one in Lebanon. They never were able really to get traction on establishing another strategic military outpost in Syria that could be used as a deterrent against Israel. Iraq, the Hashid is too far away to be effective as a significant force against Israel, and the Houthis are also too far away. So I think if you look back at October 7th, the Iranians had essentially three deterrent fronts. That was Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah, and their own missile arsenal from Iran, and they were trying to establish those others in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. And I think the latter three failed, and I think the former three also failed. There's the Gaza. Whatever happens with Gaza now politically, and with the Israeli-Palestinian question, Hamas is finished as an Iranian military deterrent against Israel for the time being, and I don't see how they could be revived. Hezbollah, like I said, is no longer really serves that purpose. It's not enough for the Iranians to be able to deter Israeli power by just being able to threaten northern Israel with some short-range rockets. So it's the loss of the leadership cadre. It's the loss of the really potent missile arsenal that's precise, that could hit Israeli population centers. And then, of course, the Iranian missile arsenal twice has been knocked out of the sky with very little damage to Israel. So I think it's what we're seeing now with Sinwar is really the end of Iranian deterrence against Israel for the time being. I'm not saying it can't be reconstituted, but for the time being, there's a window where the Iranians there is a shift in the balance of strategic power, of military power.
Indeed, it's very interesting to note that Yahya Sinwar, alongside with Khalid Mash'al, as well as Saleh al-Aghouri, who was in charge, of course, of activities in Judea and Samaria and operated from Lebanon alongside IRGC Quds Force advisors, were affiliated or known to be affiliated to the IRGC with historic connections, as opposed to other elements that are closer either to Turkey or to Iraq or to Qatar, for that matter, or Egypt. So there are various dynamics even within this organization, which is, of course, a offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. But when we look at the broader picture of this, we heard Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu message countries around the region, urging them to take note and take heed of the fact that we're witnessing the beginning of the end of the current war, but a paradigm shift in the struggle against the axis of evil, namely led by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And for that, also from Washington, D.C., we're joined by Ms. Zineb Riboua, a research fellow at the Hudson Institute, as well as the manager of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East. It's good to see you, Zineb. What is the response in the Arab world to the elimination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar?
From what I've seen so far is that everyone recognized that that Israel has been able to completely change the regional order. It's important to remember that after the October 7th attacks, the first thing that the Islamic Republic kind of pushed as a message is that this was why the Israel normalization with Arab countries and the Abraham Accords were not based on strong pillars, and that Hamas and other proxies will be able to reassert themselves against Israel, and that the struggle against the Zionist entity will never end. And I think by first of all, decredibilizing the Hezbollah, which is Iran's favorite and also the most militarized and organized organization among all of Iran's proxies, as well as targeting Haniyeh inside Iran, and now completely destroying Hamas, completely just reshaped the whole landscape. And I think this is very important for Arab countries. It's important for them to understand that Israel has the capacity, the military capacity, the willingness also to go after Iran's proxies, even defying the United States stance on it, the international community stance on it. I mean, there were many EU diplomats, for example, said that it will be impossible to actually destroy Hamas, and that Hamas is more of an idea and so on. But Israel demonstrated that it is possible. So I think this is going to turn to be a major positive movement towards, for example, for the next administration to push for more normalization agreements, because then they will have the confidence that Israel can not only protect itself, but can also protect their shared interest, which is to cooperate against Iran and its proxies.
Indeed. Mr. Oren, a day prior to the elimination of Yahya Sinwar, we had the UN Security Council holding a session on the situation in the Gaza Strip, during the course of which the representative of the United States, namely Linda Thomas Greenfield, asked a couple of quite alarming questions in the direction of Israel, particularly highlighting the dire humanitarian situation in the northern part of the enclave, citing variables that in which she also stressed the need to do more. Once again, of course, we also remember the letter sent by Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken to their counterparts in Israel, threatening that unless a change is taking place in the humanitarian condition in northern Gaza, there are going to be quite the severe implications. Also, when it comes to military aid given to Israel, are those threats that they can follow up on so late in the race for the presidential election in the United States? And if so, what does Israel do to mitigate the risk of breaching the partnership with the United States at this point?
So, of course, there are undeniable political undertones to these moves. A couple of weeks before the elections, there are pro-Palestinian or pro-Muslim interest groups in the United States who are criticizing the Biden-Harris administration for being too soft on Israel, as they portray. The problem is that according to the Blinken-Austin letter, Israel has already done the administration's bidding a few months ago, but then it stagnated and backtracked and let less aid flow into Gaza, including by the Jordanian armed forces, incidentally not too far from where the terrorist attack took place today. And after Biden talked with Netanyahu, Israel relented and let 50 trucks led by the Jordanian armed forces personnel get into Gaza. So it's a matter of visibility of how it plays back home. But there is also a real fear of epidemics in Gaza, which will not be stopped at the border with Israel. So it's a mix of real concern and political calculation.
Shifting gears northward, I'd like to focus on the northern Israeli front, but more importantly so, at a time when Israel is making additional gains, operationally speaking, along the contact front, namely roughly 5 to 10 kilometers from Israel's border, with the various terror-infested villages being dealt with as we speak. Colonel Rayburn, I'd like to focus on what this means or the implications of those developments to the Syrian theater. We're seeing in Idlib, northwestern Syria, Tahrir al-Sham, other organizations designated as terrorist, trying to reassemble their fighting force to confront the Assad regime, which is also making preparations, along with Russia, along with additional Iranian proxies, to try and push back.
Well, I mean, the Assad regime doesn't have the strength to go up against Turkey. The Russians don't have the wherewithal to enable the Assad regime to do that. Hezbollah was a significant factor on the battlefield in Syria, and they're going to be receding. I think there are two big questions out here which aren't settled yet, because the picture is still developing across the northern Middle East. First question is, will the link between Iran and Hezbollah be broken? Will the military link, essentially, the military, strategic and operational link between those two be broken? That's the first question. And that will depend on the continuing campaign in Lebanon. It will continue on whatever is about to happen between Israel and Tehran, and what is going to happen in the U.S. presidential election, because there are two potentially starkly different Middle East policies between the two contenders on November 5th. People are going to wait to see these develop before we really know how the northern Middle East, the Levant, is going to settle out. One of the questions that's open is that it's obvious, it seems Bashar al-Assad and some of his friends in the Arab world are attempting to rebrand him and his regime as available to help finish breaking the link or disrupting the link between Tehran and Hezbollah, and selling himself that way. You can see there's some, and along with it, the side benefit for some of the European countries of him agreeing to help facilitate refugee returns and so on. That's the nonsense, for example, or misguided, I think, proposition that's coming out of Italy right now, but there are others in Europe, I think, that would field such a question, and there's some others in the Arab world, some countries in the Arab world that would try to help make that connection. So these pictures are unclear yet. We're still, I think, probably a month away from seeing all of the major moves that are likely to take place to be able to recalculate across the northern Middle East on these issues.
Thank you, Colonel Rayburn. Ms. Ribois, let's take one step further in the direction of Iraq, where we're seeing Hashd al-Shaabi gaining ground when we're speaking about influence, at least, with the United States agreeing to end the Operation Inherent Resolve component in Iraq proper in exchange for a transition into a bilateral relationship, which will also diminish the 1,200 troops that are currently stationed in Iraq into roughly 1,000 or 1,200, which of course will have also more room for Iran to maneuver and lever the lack of American presence for their own interests?
I think Iraq is very much of a tricky question, mainly because Iran is not the only power that is very much interested in asserting itself. There's also Turkey. Turkey with Qatar are working together into developing the Iraqi economy and especially in establishing corridors and so on. And I think this is going to be crucial for the Iraqis. It seems, though, that because Israel has degraded Iranian proxies, a lot of other proxies are also watching that happen in real time, meaning that they are reconsidering if Iran is actually a good supporter or not. And this is, I think, crucial in how and how the different groups and factions in Iraq will operate vis-a-vis Iran. I mean, Iraq has to deal with Iran. It's in the neighborhood. They cannot really escape it. Geographically, they're condemned to. But the weaker the Islamic Republic is, the better it will be for Iraq, and the better it will be even for the Turks to maneuver. And I think this is what is mainly missing in the U.S. Strategy of withdrawal, is that there has not been a set of a plan where the United States and helps Iraqis work with close U.S. allies and partners, not just Turkey but also other Gulf countries, so that Iraq can stand on its own feet. And so I think this is. So a lot I think of what is going to happen vis-a-vis the regarding the Iran-Iraq relationship will actually depend on how much Israel will degrade Iran.
Indeed. Mr. Oren, as we speak, actually, General Gavish was supposed to be with us today. He sends his regards to the viewers at home. He is currently leading the integration of the THAAD system here in Israel, together with his American counterpart at CENTCOM. So obviously, we wish him all the best and our counterparts from CENTCOM for their very important work. But the Iranians are preparing as well, and so is Israel. What are we to expect in the near future? You don't have very much time for your answer.
It may be simplistic to look at the so-called Iranian, Russian, Chinese, maybe North Korean axis as one solid front. For instance, there is evidence that the Iranians very much want Kamala Harris to win next month, while the Russians are rooting for Donald Trump. They have some interests which do not converge. So apparently the Iranians would rather wait. Of course, if they could persuade Israel not to hit Iran at all, so much the better. And it seems as if the Biden administration is also wishing Israel to concentrate on Gaza and then Lebanon and leave Iran alone for the moment.
With that being said, Israel is set in its ways to retaliate for the abhorrent attack by the Islamic Republic against its territory with 181 ballistic missiles. Colonel Rayburn, in 1.5 minutes, is there room for maneuver before the election for Israel to launch such an attack? And if so, in the event that this evolves into something even more significant, are we expected to see a potential escalation where the United States may have to step in, even during a transition government?
These are good questions. I don't know the answer to them. I don't know. I don't know the state of discussions between the Israeli and government and the current U.S. administration. I would say, I mean, just as looking at it as a military strategist, I would think that the domestic U.S. political considerations probably will be secondary for the Israeli decision makers. What they're trying to do is to restore deterrence and to capitalize on the tactical military gains that they've made, but also to try to make clear. What did happen twice was several hundred missiles, drones, and rockets fired at Israel from Iran. And that's something that Israel can't take the chance of not reestablishing effective deterrence against, to preclude. And I think right now that probably the calculus probably is that deterrence is not fully restored. So I fully expect that will be the uppermost in Israeli decision makers' minds.
Ms. Riboua, last March, the CENTCOM commander, General Michael Kurilla, testified in front of the Arms and Services Committee. He highlighted the connection between the Iranians and the Yemenites and the fact that all munitions come from Iran to Yemen in their various belligerent activities in the region. Is there room to maneuver before the election once again for the United States, as we saw now also with the B-2 bomber striking various targets, or are we going to see a certain relaxation of attacks and then following the transition there will be a pickup?
Certainly a relaxation. I don't see the Biden administration moving towards bigger operations. The election is very close, so I don't see them doing that. They want to. They've been avoiding doing anything actually in the Middle East. Even with the air bridge that Iran now is establishing with Sudan, there are no indications that anything will be done about it. For different reasons. Their constituency is mainly against it. It would be also look very amateur to do something last minute. So I don't see them moving towards that way.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank Ms. Riboua, Colonel Rayburn, as well as Mr. Oren, of course. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.